Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Gossips 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. A new empire was born the moment Bill Spencer stood alone in his office late at night, the city lights of Los Angeles stretching endlessly behind him like a kingdom waiting to be claimed, because this time it wasn't about revenge or ego or even legacy. It was about power, survival, and rewriting history. And as Bill stared at the old Spencer Publications plaque hanging on the wall, memories of battles with Ridge Forrester, years of uneasy truces, broken friendships, and silent wars came flooding back, reminding him that the Spencer name had always been underestimated in the fashion world, always treated like an outsider looking in while Forrester Creations ruled the runway like untouchable royalty. But tonight that changed, because tonight Bill Spencer decided the fashion industry would never look at the Spencers the same way again. And with a slow breath, he picked up his phone and made the call that would shake Los Angeles to its core, launching Spencer Creations not as a quiet startup or a vanity brand, but as a direct, unapologetic challenge to the Forrester throne, a declaration of war disguised as innovation, and within days the ripple effects were impossible to ignore as whispers spread through boardrooms, design studios, and media outlets that Spencer Creations wasn't just entering the market, it was targeting Forrester Creations specifically, aiming straight at its heart with aggressive talent acquisitions, secret partnerships, and a financial backing so massive it made even Ridge Forrester pause mid-stride when he first heard the name spoken aloud in the Forrester boardroom, because Ridge knew that when Bill set his sights on something, he didn't dabble. He dominated, and Brooke Logan felt it too, that familiar chill of history repeating itself, because she had lived through enough Spencer-Forrester wars to recognize the signs, the tension in Ridge's jaw, the way Eric Forrester grew quieter than usual, his eyes distant as if remembering past battles where pride nearly destroyed everything he loved, and while Eric tried to reassure the family that Forrester Creations had weathered storms before, that their legacy, craftsmanship, and unity would carry them through, Steffi wasn't convinced, because she had already seen the numbers, the leaked projections, the industry buzz that Spencer Creations wasn't just another fashion house, it was a machine built to disrupt, to lure away designers with promises of creative freedom and unprecedented profit-sharing, and worst of all, it was succeeding as one by one familiar names began quietly clearing out their desks at Forrester, leaving behind unanswered questions and a growing sense of betrayal that cut deeper than any financial loss, and across town, Bill watched it all unfold with a controlled satisfaction, not smug but resolute, because this wasn't about humiliating Ridge, it was about proving that the Spencer name could evolve beyond media and scandal into something timeless, something that could stand toe-to-toe with the Forrester legacy. And Katie Logan, standing at Bill's side as Spencer Creations co-founder, felt the weight of that ambition pressing down on her chest, knowing this move would change everything, not just for the industry but for their family, because Katie believed in the vision, believed in building something bold and modern and ethically driven, yet she couldn't ignore the personal cost, the inevitable collision with Brooke, with Ridge, with the complicated web of loyalties that defined their lives. And as press conferences were scheduled and sleek concept images leaked online showcasing Spencer Creations' minimalist luxury aesthetic, clean lines, fearless silhouettes, unapologetic innovation, the fashion world erupted, critics calling it reckless, daring, overdue, while Forrester Creations scrambled to maintain its composure, Ridge doubling down on tradition while Steffi pushed for aggressive countermeasures, each believing their approach was the right one, even as cracks began forming beneath the surface, because the truth was Forrester Creations had grown comfortable, insulated by decades of dominance, and Spencer Creations was exposing that vulnerability with ruthless precision, and the tension spilled beyond business into deeply personal territory when Brooke confronted Bill face-to-face, demanding to know why he had to target Forrester specifically, why he couldn't build something new without tearing down what her family had built. And Bill, uncharacteristically honest, told her that competition wasn't destruction, that empires didn't fall because of challengers, they fell because they stopped evolving, and his words lingered with Brooke long after she walked away, forcing her to question whether Forrester Creations was truly prepared for the future or simply clinging to its past. And meanwhile Ridge felt the pressure mounting as investors began asking uncomfortable questions, buyers hesitated, and longtime clients explored new options, their loyalty shaken by the excitement surrounding Spencer Creations' debut runway show. An event that became the talk of Los Angeles before it even happened, because Bill knew spectacle mattered. And when the night finally arrived, the venue pulsed with anticipation, celebrities, influencers, and industry titans filling the room as the lights dimmed and the first model stepped onto the runway wearing a design that didn't just announce a brand. It announced a philosophy, bold yet refined, disruptive yet grounded. And as applause thundered through the space, cameras flashing, Bill locked eyes with Ridge across the room. A silent acknowledgement passing between them that this was no longer theoretical, no longer posturing, this was real, and the war for fashion supremacy had officially begun. And back at Forrester Creations the aftermath was immediate and brutal. Emergency meetings, sleepless nights, desperate strategies, Eric urging unity while Ridge and Steffi clashed over direction, each fearing that one wrong move could cost them everything their family had built. And through it all, relationships strained to the breaking point, Brooke torn between loyalty and love, Katie battling guilt even as she stood proudly beside the company she helped create, and Bill carrying the heavy truth that building an empire required sacrifices no one ever applauded. And as headlines declared a new empire is born and analysts debated whether Spencer Creations would dethrone Forrester or simply force it to evolve, one thing became undeniable. Nothing in Los Angeles would ever be the same again, because this wasn't just a corporate rivalry, it was a collision of legacies, a battle between past and future, between tradition and reinvention. And as the city buzzed with speculation and tension, the question lingered in every boardroom, every family dinner, every whispered conversation: would Forrester Creations rise stronger than ever? Or was the Spencer empire destined to reshape the fashion world forever? As the dust from Spencer Creations' explosive debut began to settle, the real consequences of Bill Spencer's bold move started to surface in quieter, more devastating ways. Because while headlines screamed about innovation and disruption, behind closed doors emotions were fraying and alliances were quietly shifting, especially at Forrester Creations, where the once familiar hum of confidence had been replaced by an uneasy silence, broken only by hurried footsteps and whispered conversations that stopped the moment someone new entered the room. And Ridge Forrester felt the weight of it all pressing down on him as he stared at sketches spread across his desk, designs that suddenly felt too safe, too expected, wondering for the first time if the house his family built was standing on tradition alone rather than true evolution. And Steffi, refusing to let fear dictate their future, pushed harder than ever, insisting they accelerate new lines, modernize branding, and fight fire with fire, even if it meant taking risks Eric Forrester had spent a lifetime avoiding, while Eric himself struggled with a painful truth he rarely voiced, that this battle wasn't just about market share, it was about whether the Forrester name could survive in a world that no longer bowed automatically to legacy. And across town at Spencer Creations, success brought its own kind of pressure as Bill realized that creating an empire was easier than sustaining it. Every move scrutinized, every decision magnified, and while Katie worked tirelessly to keep the company's ethical vision intact, she couldn't ignore the tension simmering beneath the surface, especially when former Forrester employees arrived carrying both talent and resentment, their loyalty fragile, their trust earned cautiously. And when Brooke found herself caught between boardroom gossip and family dinners filled with unspoken resentment, she began to see how deeply this rivalry was cutting into the fabric of their lives. Because this wasn't a clean business war. It was personal, layered with decades of love, betrayal, ambition, and regret. And as investors circled like hawks and media outlets speculated endlessly about which empire would fall first, both families were forced to confront uncomfortable questions about who they were without their companies, what they were willing to sacrifice to win, and whether victory would even feel like triumph once the dust finally settled. And late one night, as Ridge and Bill found themselves alone at a charity gala neither could avoid, their eyes met across the room once more. No anger this time, just mutual understanding that neither man could turn back now, because the war they'd ignited was bigger than either of them, bigger than fashion, bigger than pride. And as Los Angeles glittered on around them, indifferent to legacy and loyalty alike, it became clear that this clash of empires was only just beginning, with consequences that would reshape their families, their futures, and the very meaning of power in a world where even the strongest foundations could be shaken. The war between Spencer Creations and Forrester Creations did not explode all at once but instead spread like a slow-burning fire, creeping into every corner of Los Angeles society, because once the novelty of Spencer Creations' debut faded, what remained was something far more dangerous: momentum. And Ridge Forrester felt it every morning when he walked into the Forrester building and sensed the shift, the subtle loss of certainty in the air. The way assistants exchanged glances, the way longtime executives suddenly asked sharper questions, and the way designers who once spoke confidently about the Forrester way now talked about trends, relevance, and survival, words Ridge had never imagined would be attached to the company his family built. And yet there it was, undeniable, as orders slowed, buyers requested revisions, and loyal partners cautiously explored alternative collaborations, many of them quietly meeting with representatives from Spencer Creations under the guise of industry networking. While Steffi pushed forward relentlessly, refusing to let fear define their future, organizing emergency strategy sessions that stretched late into the night, demanding innovation at a pace that left some exhausted and others inspired. And although Eric supported his granddaughter's passion, he worried about the cost of moving too fast, about abandoning craftsmanship and heritage in the rush to compete, because Eric understood something the others didn't, that Forrester Creations wasn't just a business, it was a family identity, and losing it would mean losing themselves. And yet across town, Bill Spencer was grappling with his own version of that truth, because while the world praised him as a visionary disruptor, he lay awake at night staring at the ceiling, knowing that with every success Spencer Creations achieved, he was widening a rift that might never heal, not just with Ridge but with Brooke, with his sons, and with the past versions of himself that once believed power could fix everything. And Katie, watching Bill balance ambition with quiet doubt, became the moral compass of the company, insisting on transparency, sustainability, and fairness even when shortcuts promised faster dominance, because she refused to let Spencer Creations become just another ruthless empire, especially one built on the ashes of people she loved. And tensions escalated when rumors surfaced that Spencer Creations was courting one of Forrester's crown jewel designers, someone Ridge personally mentored. And when the truth came out that the designer had already signed a confidential contract, the betrayal cut so deep it left Ridge speechless, forcing Brooke to confront the painful reality that loyalty in the fashion world was conditional, fragile, and easily shattered by opportunity. And as the press seized on the drama, framing it as a modern-day fashion dynasty war, both companies were thrust into a spotlight that magnified every misstep, every internal disagreement, and every emotional crack. While social media buzzed with speculation, fans picking sides as if this were a prize fight rather than a business battle, and amid the chaos, personal relationships began to fracture under the strain, as Brooke and Katie struggled to maintain their bond, each woman believing she was doing the right thing, yet unable to escape the sense that they were standing on opposite sides of an invisible line. And when Ridge accused Brooke of secretly sympathizing with Bill's vision, the argument spiraled into years of unresolved resentment, forcing them to question whether love could survive when loyalty was constantly tested by ambition. And even Steffi found herself at odds with Finn, who urged her to consider the human cost of endless competition, reminding her that families, not just companies, were at stake. Words Steffi brushed aside until she witnessed firsthand the toll on her grandfather, Eric's health visibly affected by stress, his hands trembling slightly as he reviewed reports that showed Forrester Creations fighting not from a position of dominance but defense. And meanwhile Spencer Creations faced its own reckoning when rapid growth exposed vulnerabilities, supply chain issues, investor pressure, and creative disagreements threatening to fracture the carefully curated image of unity. And Bill was forced to make a decision that would define his leadership, whether to prioritize speed and profit or integrity and stability. And in a rare moment of vulnerability, he chose the latter, slowing expansion, protecting his team, and reaffirming the values Katie fought so hard to embed into the company. A move that surprised critics and reassured employees, even as it intensified frustration among investors hungry for immediate returns. And the tension reached a boiling point when both companies found themselves bidding on the same international contract, a partnership that could tip the balance of power decisively, turning the competition into an all-or-nothing gamble, with Ridge seeing it as Forrester's chance to reclaim authority and Bill viewing it as Spencer Creations' opportunity to cement legitimacy. And as negotiations unfolded behind closed doors, secrets surfaced, alliances shifted, and old wounds reopened, forcing everyone involved to confront the uncomfortable truth that this battle was no longer about fashion. It was about identity, pride, and the fear of becoming irrelevant in a world that moved faster than tradition ever could. And when the final decision loomed, both families braced for impact, knowing that win or lose, nothing would return to the way it was before, because empires once challenged are never the same. And as Los Angeles watched breathlessly, The question wasn't just which company would emerge stronger, but whether any of them would recognize themselves when the war finally ended. The night the international contract decision finally came down, Los Angeles seemed to hold its breath, because by then everyone understood this wasn't just another business deal but a turning point that would redefine power in the fashion world. And inside the Forrester Creations boardroom, Ridge paced like a caged lion, replaying every choice he'd made over the past months, every moment he'd dismissed Bill Spencer as a reckless outsider, every time he'd leaned on legacy instead of innovation. While Steffi stood firm at the table, jaw set, eyes blazing with determination, convinced that if they lost now it wouldn't be because Forrester Creations lacked talent but because fear had slowed them down, and Eric sat quietly at the head of the room, hands folded, feeling the weight of generations resting on his shoulders, remembering when this company was nothing more than a dream shared with Stephanie, built stitch by stitch, fight by fight, sacrifice by sacrifice, and across town at Spencer Creations. Bill stared at the city skyline again, the same view that had inspired him to build something bold, yet tonight it felt heavier, because success now carried consequences he could no longer pretend didn't matter, and Katie watched him closely, sensing the storm beneath his calm exterior, reminding him softly that whatever happened next would echo for years, not just in profits and headlines but in family dinners, in broken trust, in relationships that might never recover. And when the call finally came, delivering the news that the contract had been awarded to Spencer Creations, the reaction on both sides was immediate and visceral, because for Bill it was confirmation that his vision had legitimacy, that Spencer Creations was no longer the challenger but a true force, while for Ridge it felt like the ground had shifted beneath his feet, forcing him to confront the unthinkable reality that Forrester Creations could no longer rely on its name alone to command respect. And the fallout was swift, with investors demanding change, media framing the loss as a symbolic dethroning, and employees whispering about layoffs and restructuring, fear creeping into hallways once filled with pride, and Ridge, pushed to the brink, lashed out in frustration, clashing with Steffi over direction, accusing her of pushing too hard, too fast, while she fired back that hesitation had cost them everything. And Eric, witnessing the fracture between father and daughter, realized the true danger wasn't Spencer Creations, it was internal division, because empires rarely fall from external attack alone, they crumble from within. And meanwhile Bill faced his own reckoning as critics accused him of deliberately targeting Forrester Creations, painting him as a villain who thrived on destroying others' legacies, accusations that stung more than he expected, forcing him to reflect on whether his ambition had crossed a line he could never step back from. And Brooke found herself trapped in the middle, torn between the man she loved and the family she believed in, her heart heavy with the knowledge that no matter which side she leaned toward, someone would feel betrayed. And when she confronted Bill privately, demanding to know if victory was worth the cost, he surprised her by admitting that triumph felt hollow when it came at the expense of people he still cared about, a confession that lingered with Brooke long after she left, planting seeds of doubt about whether this war could ever produce a true winner. And as weeks passed, the consequences deepened, with Forrester Creations forced to make painful cuts, parting ways with longtime employees who had given decades of loyalty, scenes that left Ridge shaken as he realized leadership meant bearing responsibility for lives beyond his own, while Steffi, though outwardly strong, wrestled with guilt late at night, questioning whether her aggressive push to compete had accelerated the company's struggles. And Eric, sensing time slipping away, began planning for the future in ways he never had before, quietly considering succession, legacy, and the possibility that the Forrester name might need to evolve in ways he once resisted. And at Spencer Creations, growth brought chaos as well as opportunity, rapid expansion straining systems, creative teams clashing over direction, investors demanding faster returns, and Bill was forced to confront a truth he'd long avoided, that building something sustainable required more patience and humility than conquest ever did. And Katie, increasingly seen as the heart of the company, stepped into a stronger leadership role, mediating conflicts, grounding decisions in values, earning respect not through fear but consistency. And when rumors surfaced that Spencer Creations was considering a potential merger with an international luxury conglomerate, the industry erupted again, speculation running wild about whether Bill was preparing to sell or simply strengthening his empire further, rumors that reached Forrester Creations like salt in an open wound, reigniting anger and fear. And Ridge, refusing to let the Forrester legacy fade quietly, made a bold move of his own, announcing a radical rebranding initiative that shocked the fashion world, blending heritage craftsmanship with modern innovation in a way that signaled Forrester Creations was not done fighting, and the announcement sent ripples through Los Angeles, reigniting interest, restoring some confidence, and reminding everyone that the Forresters were at their strongest when backed into a corner. And as both companies surged forward on parallel paths, the personal toll became impossible to ignore, with Brooke and Ridge struggling to reconnect amid constant tension, Katie distancing herself emotionally from Brooke to protect her own heart, and Bill grappling with the realization that power did not insulate him from loneliness. And one evening, fate forced another confrontation when both families attended the same charity fundraiser, the room charged with unspoken history, glances heavy with meaning, and when Bill and Ridge found themselves face to face again, there was no shouting, no threats, just a quiet acknowledgement that neither of them had won, because victory in this war came with losses that could never be measured on balance sheets, and as they parted, each man carried the same unsettling thought, that the true test of their legacies wasn't whether they could dominate the fashion world, but whether they could preserve what mattered most while doing so. And as Los Angeles continued to buzz with speculation, alliances shifting, futures uncertain, one truth became clear above all others. The birth of a new empire had changed everything, and the war between Spencer Creations and Forrester Creations was no longer about who would rule the runway, but about who would survive the cost of ambition without losing themselves. Because in a world built on beauty, power, and pride, the most dangerous thing of all was forgetting why the empire was built in the first place.